This isn't Hollywood. This is real life. This is real talk. Real issues. All with a side of comedic relief. Brought to you by an old, retired, burned-out cop himself, who now has the freedom to speak about anything to support the brothers and sisters in blue. Welcome to Burnt Pork.
All right, welcome back to Burnt Pork. This is Chubbs. Got a great guest tonight. Excited to talk to him. And I was really thankful that he wanted to do this last minute with me. I think I was going to be able to get him on here because how big he is and how big he's getting. I'm not talking about physically. I'm talking about in the comedy world. So everybody welcome Vinnie Montez. Vinnie, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing real good, Chubbs. I'm excited to be here. And I always like to cut it up with new friends, and especially if you're down in the Fort Worth area. I visited it says Burnt Pork behind you, but I'm like, man, I've been to some good barbecue places.
I was going to say, everybody goes to barbecue and they hear Burnt Pork, that's for sure.
Yeah. You know me, man. Look at me. I don't miss a meal. You cop or not, I don't miss a meal.
There's nothing wrong with that. You talk about that a lot in your show, I'll talk about too. But
I do. I talk about the Mexican food, though. It's a different kind of burnt pork. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, have you ever had the Mexican food around here, the Tex-Mex around here?
Yeah, it's actually pretty good. Probably some of the best food I ever had in Texas was on an extradition down by El Paso. So
okay, yeah. Well, I mean, you're right there by the border, so it's got to be good down there. But
yeah, they made the tortillas fresh and everything. I was pretty excited about the whole situation.
Yeah, it's not bad up here too. But I'm originally from New Mexico, and New Mexican food is way different than New Mexico food's probably like Colorado food.
Yeah, I mean,
sure a lot of green chili.
Thing is the green chili, but they also have that red chili, And I grew up with chili piquin and piñon. I mean, if you're from New Mexico, I'm sure you've had piñon.
Oh yeah.
My dad's born in Las Vegas, New Mexico.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know where that's at. I was actually born in Roswell, so not a big city either, just like Las Vegas is.
Is Roswell got some like UFO?
Yeah, dude, I've heard it all before. I've heard it all before. Trust me. And I know I'm not an alien. I may look like one, act like one sometimes, but I'm not.
Oh,
I can promise you. But so Vinny he's still a police officer in Colorado, and he got into the world of stand-up comedy. I had a chance to watch his show today on Amazon Prime. It's called Vinnyisms. The show was freaking great, man. It's hilarious, but there's a lot of meaning to it too. I know that. So tell us a little bit about how your transition from the cop world into stand-up comedy and now doing what you're doing, basically.
Well, I became a cop in the late 90s. I got hired in 98. And I was inspired as a young kid watching Chips, Bonch and John become a police officer, and I always wanted to do it. I started as an explorer when I was really young, and then I stayed with that program until I became a cop in 98. I was no different than any young gun coming into the field, excited to get involved. Get in the action and, be a cop and help people. I know that's the cliche thing to say, but truly that's what I got into it for. I wanted to go to patrol right away, but they thought it'd be better that I'd spend some time in the jail for the sheriff's office I work for and learn a little bit about life being such a young kid. And it was good for me. Came out to patrol, worked pretty much everything you can. I'm a public information officer now where I work. But it was about year 10 where I really started to struggle. I had watched and idolized a lot of these deputies that I used to ride with as a kid. They would never talk about their mental health. They would always just be like, "You good? Yeah, I'm good. You good?" But they never dived into their feelings. You had to prove yourself on the street, in my opinion. This is my perception, the way I saw it. You had to prove yourself on the street, and you didn't want your partners to think you were weak. And that's the way I saw it. That's the way I interpreted what I saw. By the time I got to year 10, I was just bottling stuff up. I wasn't talking about stuff with my significant other. I wasn't dealing with the things that I was seeing, smelling, tasting, hearing. And by the time I got to year 10, I was an angry cop. I was very angry. I was bitter inside. I'd go out to dinner and I'd see people having a good time, and I was envious of that. And I was angry at them because I was envious because I couldn't enjoy my life the way they were enjoying their life. And, I get mad at the smallest little thing. And so I had a kid die in essentially my arms in 2008. I came upon an accident. People in my agency refer to me as a shit magnet. If there's something that's going to happen, I will be there. And honestly, I just wasn't acknowledging it. And then when this kid died, I just couldn't hold back the emotion anymore. And I realized I was drinking a lot more at that time in my life. I was self-sabotaging, for lack of better words, and not processing. So eventually I had to reach out for help, and I started talking to some clinicians, but they were like our EAP program that we had at the time back then. Mm-hmm. And they weren't any good because they weren't law enforcement clinicians. And there's a big difference, talking to people who know the business versus not. And so I kind of got discouraged. And it wasn't until I tied in with a law enforcement clinician that was able to really help reach out to me. And one of the things that I really realized right away is I needed to separate myself from the cop life, because my whole life from a young age had been just copping, copping, copping. And I was the guy that was always at the station after hours, beyond my tour of duty, was signed up for every overtime possible. And, I tell young people today, be careful not to burn out. You can. So I hit that wall, and I just didn't want to be like that anymore. And I started reaching out and getting the therapy that I needed. And we did some stuff called EMDR. It's called the Magic. Helps you process left brain, right brain without getting too deep into it. But it really helped me out. One of the things that I learned and attended a class by Dr. Kevin Gilmartin, hey, you need to take care of yourself and have something outside of law enforcement. A lot of people don't. And that was me. And so comedy was a way. I used to watch Def Comedy Jam coming up. I always thought I was pretty funny. And at work, I always cut up with everybody. Cops are actually very funny people. You sat in the briefings, we cut it up. We give each other a hard time. There's that dark humor. There's that going back and forth with the people that you work with every day. And I was like, well, why don't I just try to take this to the stage? So I had my first endeavor, 2007, on stage here at Comedy Works in Denver, Colorado. And it was an opportunity that I will never forget. 2 minutes to show my stuff. And I pretty much showed my ass is what I did, looking back at that tape. And it was pretty bad, but I stuck with it just like anything. The only way you master anything, whether you become a good defense and tactics instructor or a good driving instructor, doing things over and over and over again. So I started mastering it, and people liked what I was doing. And by the time 2018 came around, that was things started taking off for me. And 2019, I got my first special on Dry Bar, which is on Amazon now. And things have just been growing for me. So now I tour all over the country doing stand-up comedy pretty much almost every weekend that allows me to. And then we got the Heroes Off Duty tour coming up in January of 2026. So I'm pretty excited about that, because I get to hang out with fellow first responders that are doing stand-up comedy, whether they're in the military, they're nurses, doctors, firefighters, police officers, sheriff's deputies. There's a whole contingent of us that are part of this group that are going to be performing, and I'm super excited. I've already done shows with them to kind of do the promotion shows, and some of these guys and gals are absolutely phenomenal, and I'm just super excited about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So the Heroes tour you're on, Heroes Off Duty, how many comedians are there in that whole group y'all have? Is it the same ones that go on the tour? No. Okay.
So there are going to be some mainstays, I think, people who will be on more of the different locations we're going to, but they've auditioned a lot of people, and I would probably say there's well over 10, but there'll probably be like 5 or 6 on each show, somewhere around there. I don't want to speak for them, but it's probably that's what's been on every show so far. So I'm just assuming that's going to be what it's going to be like.
Gotcha.
And the response has been amazing, because for the first time doing stand-up comedy, usually when I'm performing with other comedians, they find out I'm a cop. They're like, oh. And, just like when you're a cop and you show up at a party or something like that, and there people find out you're a cop, if they've got something nefarious in their background, they're like, hey, man, nice knowing you.
Yeah.
This time it's very different. All these people understand that dark humor, that dark trauma that I've experienced, and they're really relatable to me and to everybody that's in the audiences, because people are coming out that either are first responders or family members of first responders. Because let's be honest, you were not the only first responder. Your family lived right with you up until you retired. 100%. So they knew all the ins and outs, the quirks. Cops, it's everybody knows cops. They got to go to a restaurant. They can't be normal and just sit like normal people. They got to sit with their back against the wall, know where all the exits are. They have code words of slang for their wives and kids. Hey, if this happens, you go here. And so it's time to start trauma bonding, for lack of better words, and bring everybody together. And it's going to be an awesome show. And I'm so excited, because I haven't been a part of anything like this before.
So how many shows are y'all doing? I know I saw some dates in January, I guess, the end of January.
So just the kickoff weekend is January 29th, 30th, and 31st. January 29th is Patch Hog, New York. January 30th is Atlanta, Georgia. And then January 31st is going to be Pensacola, Florida. So just in that one tight weekend, we're going all across the eastern seaboard there for the most part. And then, they've got shows planned for what I understand to be for throughout the year. So I'm really excited. And this is just the kickoff of the tour.
Nice. Well, I'm hoping y'all get to come to Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Oh, I would love to. I've done a lot of the shows down there. I've headlined the clubs down there. It's escaping me now, the club right now. There's 2 of them, one in Fort Worth and Hyenas. So Hyenas in Fort Worth and Hyenas in Dallas.
Yep.
And then I was there with Trailer Trash Tammy. I don't know if you know who she is.
Yeah.
So
I don't know her like you know her. Like, again, I can go back to the video and that's a different story, but it's funny as hell.
It was balls out, bro. That's all I'm telling you right
definitely
now.
Was. Yeah, so it definitely was.
We did shows at those Hyena clubs, and we also did one. There used to be another Hyenas club out a little bit outside of Dallas Fort Worth there. I can't remember the town now that it was, but yeah, it's great, man. And I love the Dallas Fort Worth area because I just feel like I'm at home when I'm in Texas. My mom is from Laredo, Texas,
Okay.
so my dad's from New Mexico, and so I look at Texas as like a home away from home. I always
Yeah.
feel like I'm good there. The food's good, it's hot, it's plentiful, and the people are just really down to earth. So I just enjoy that. There's a lot of respect. Honestly, I was in Denton, Texas, and I'll never forget. I was in a barber shop, and these kids were carrying on. These teenagers carrying on. I was getting my head shaved because I wasn't getting a haircut. Let's be honest about that.
That's what I was wondering, but I wasn't going to say anything.
Yeah,
I'm like,
I know.
okay, cool.
And these kids were carrying us on it. The lady who owned the barbershop, I didn't even know she was the owner. She's like, "Hey, that's enough." And every kid in that seat was like, "Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yep.
Yes, ma'am." And where I live and work right now, that would not happen. But that just goes back to the greatness of the people of the state of Texas.
Yeah, it's a great state, man. Like I said, I was born and raised in New Mexico, but I'm glad I ended up here. Definitely a different world here compared to New Mexico. I still love New Mexico. There's still obviously a place in my heart for it, but
yeah,
a lot of things have gone downhill in New Mexico too, which sucks, especially being a native there, you know. But
I was in Albuquerque not long ago, and it's a different place now.
Oh God, I was when I was in the Air Force. I was stationed in Albuquerque, and I could not wait to get the hell out of Albuquerque.
Wow.
I was so ready.
Yeah,
it was awful. That was long 4 years. Long 4 years in Albuquerque.
Those cops work in that city right now, man. I take my hat off to them.
Oh yeah,
it's a tough place to work.
It's tough for a lot of reasons. For the politics there, you know, if nothing else. And it's not a great city to work in. Period, with the crime there, but politics even makes it worse there. But I won't get into politics.
Yeah, no, let's not do that.
Yeah, you mentioned the Explorer program, and the agency I was at, we had an Explorer program. It kind of went by the wayside. I feel like it's kind of a trend now that the Explorer programs are going away. Do you see that, or is it just maybe something around here that's kind of local around here that's happening?
You know, we have an Explorer program. I would say our program is not as big as it used to be when I was an Explorer.
Mm-hmm.
I think things are different. I think, you know, when you have things that happen in law enforcement, you know, like 2020,
Mm-hmm.
I think that not only impacts people who are on the job, which it certainly did, but you also have the impact of the image of the role of law enforcement in society. And I don't think it's sought after. You know, honestly, I'm always recruiting for our agency. We need people just like every other agency, no matter where I'm at, restaurants, whatever. And I got to tell you, 9 times out of 10, people are like, "No, that's okay," or "No, you know, that's cool," but I don't think so. I just think that it's a really the people who are coming in today. They have a strong calling to be here, and I just don't think it's as popular as a profession as it might have been perceived in the past. It's still a profession that's always going to be needed, but boy, I think you're right, and I do see that around the country. I know there are posts that are not around anymore that used to be around that I was familiar with. But, you know, just like law enforcement, you know, during 2020, we had a lot of people in our agency leave right after that year. And I don't think that's any different for Explore posts. I think, you know, you see the same kind of impacts, you know, down the line, because those are people who are future officers, you know. But the ones that we do have, they are gung ho, they're ready to go, and they want to definitely move on into the career.
Yeah, I'd like to see that program come back and, you know, come back stronger than it was. I just like, but you made a good point. I think it's one of those things that, you know, a lot of the young kids these days, they see what happened in 2020, and, you know, but another thing, they're deprived of shows like Cops and, you know, stuff like that we watched when we were teenagers and everything else. And that's, we ate that shit up when we were that age, you know.
Oh, my one friend would record every single episode of Cops, and then when he filled that VHS tape, we'd all get together and we'd have like a Cops watching party.
Nice.
And we'd be handcuffing each other by the end of the night, you know, and you know, trying to put moves on each other. Nobody's trained, mind you. Nobody's really trained, but we're doing the moves that we thought we knew and beating the hell out of each other. But you know, it's that camaraderie. It's that sense of, you know, wanting to be part of something. And you know, I never served in the military. That's one regret I do have. You know, but everybody chooses their different paths. I certainly feel that I've had a meaningful career. I'm very blessed and proud of the career I've had, and I've been able to help people. And a lot of times, quite frankly, you know this, Chubbs, you're never going to know who you impacted. You know, that one DUI arrest that you made, who did you prevent from getting hit that night? You know, that one DV arrest, that person didn't get killed. There's a lot of things that people don't look at sometimes. And I've had a lot of time to reflect over a long career and say, you know what, I'm never going to know the true impact that I had. For those of you that are listening and watching and thinking about law enforcement, you just don't know. So if you're interested in doing it, you know, jump in, because we do need you, men, women, everybody from all kinds of different backgrounds. Let's get in here, help them out. We need people from all backgrounds, man.
No, we definitely do. And a lot of it too is I've noticed that too. We haven't been getting as many people that are coming out of the military. You know, back in the day, well, first of all, back in the day, it's hard to get a cop job. Period. It was a tough job to get.
Competitive.
people getting out of the military always had kind of a leg up on everybody else. But now it seems like there's not, the people that are getting out of the military aren't interested in that career anymore.
Right.
And again, it may go back to 2020 and everything else, but it just seems like we're losing so much steam that we had built up, over a couple decades, that it's just gone now, and not sure where to go.
And I'm joking, but it's like, do you have a pulse?
Yeah. No, trust me, I worked with some of those people that just had a pulse, and I'm sure you do too, or did, either one. But yeah, it's just one of those things that I don't know how we get back to it. And I think you do a good job of that. Like the show I watched yours, you talk about humanizing, the part of the reason you do the comedy is kind of humanize the cop world. And I think that's a big part of it too. Cause like I said, after 2020, it was like, we're all a bunch of freaking robots and we're all just, bloodthirsty animals, basically, as the way 2020 went. And, I think you do a good job of kind of humanizing that. And you talk about when you walk on stage and you tell everybody you're a cop, they're all kind of like, oh, and then all of a sudden, you start being funny and you start being yourself, and people kind of get past that. And you talk about, like you talked about earlier, about going to a party and you introduce yourself and people are like, oh, that guy's a cop. Nobody wants to talk to you. It's either nobody wants to talk to you or everybody wants to come up to you and be like, hey, what was the weirdest thing you ever saw? Or what was the grossest thing you ever saw? But other than that, nobody wants to talk to you,
Or you get that person that says, hey, my friend got a ticket. And is it true that you can do this? And what, and then all of a sudden you become like the Encyclopedia Britannica. And those of you who are under 25 don't even know what that is.
Oh, yeah. Or how much weed can I have on me where I won't get arrested?
Right.
I've heard that one 1,000 times too. But
and the thing is that what I've learned, and I'm telling you, I've learned this from the school of hard knocks. Hitting the wall and being in a bad place is, the career is noble. You have to have a certain ethic for it, absolutely. You have to have the certain mindset for it. But at the end of the day, I would have never said this back in the day. It is a job, and when you're there, you need to give 150%. You need to do what's right. You need to help people that can help themselves. But when you're done for the day, you need to be done for the day, and you need to find other things outside of the job that are happy, make you happy, whether that be your kids or family or shooting hoops, or for me, stand-up comedy, whatever it is. You have to pursue those things, because when you get home as a cop, especially after you've been doing it for a little while, and I'm sure you felt this, Chubbs, you just want to sit in that recliner or sit in that sofa and just kind of vegetate and just watch TV. But that's not doing you any good, because you got to get out there and live that life, because you work so hard and put so much effort into it that you've got to enjoy that piece of it. And sometimes it takes a little bit to get out of that funk, get out of that chair. And I'm telling you, this is a guy who was just like, I'd come home and every cop in the world will tell you, your significant other, your wife, your spouse starts asking you, what do you want to do? And you're like, I don't care. Well, what do you want to eat? I don't care. And you get in this role of it being the same stuff over and over again. And it's just a bad cycle to me. And so you have to remind yourself, what do I want to eat? I have some choices here. What am I going to do? And for me, even being as old and as big as I am today, I still have to make time. I work out at night before I go to sleep. And people say, how do you do that? It just helps me clear my mind. I take a little rest after I'm done working out, and I can finally go to sleep. And sleep is so important. And sometimes, in the cop world, you don't get that. And then after a while, that starts getting into your psyche. It starts messing with your rhythms. It makes you're irritable, so you really have to protect yourself. And the only way I could say this is sometimes you have to be selfish about taking care of yourself as a cop. So for all those that are, thinking about it, there's a lot of things, just like any other athlete, they do a lot of preparation, but you have to do those things too for yourself to keep your mind right. Because the things that you're going to see, taste, smell, touch, and hear in this world are unlike anything else. And I'm not telling you anything you don't know, Chubbs.
Yeah. And it's hard to prepare people for that. And because they don't know. And going back to the kind of work-life balance, that's one of the piece of advice I'd always give the new guys and girls is you need to have friends outside of the cop world.
Oh yeah.
And I've seen so many officers that live and breathe cop stuff. They don't hang out with anybody besides the guys at the PD. And, you mentioned on your show too, I'm not just trying to parrot everything you said on your show.
No.
But you mentioned that on your show about having people outside of law enforcement, and it's you realize people outside of law enforcement are like, oh shit, there's a whole different world going on that I don't even know about. And you're never going to know that unless you have people out,
Yeah. And they look at things completely different, because they don't have that suspicious mind, for lack of better words. You're not wondering. They don't wonder about everybody's motives. They take that people are good, and when we're working, we have to question everything, right? So, even my significant other will tell me sometimes today, she'll be like, "Hey, I'm not one of the suspects." And I don't mean to be overly inquisitive, but like I ask a lot of
Right.
questions, and you have to own that. And we have people. The people you're alluding to are my professor friend that is in the movie, and my friends Jamie and Peggy. They're very, very down to earth, normal civilian. I call them cake eaters. They are
Yeah.
just regular people, and they leave their garage door open all the time. And not that I'm not going to tell you where they live, but they do like stupid stuff in my opinion all the time, and I'm telling them that, and they're just like they're oblivious to it because they're living their lives, and we exist in our world truly to help people live those kind of lives. That's the whole reason law enforcement exists, is so people can enjoy their lives. When you have that outside perspective reminding you, hey Vinny, this is just a normal thing, you're getting a little too copish, and they've told me that, hey, you're getting a little bit, relax, it's all good, we're having a good time, don't be so that
Yeah.
mindset. And when you have real friends like that who are willing to tell you that, that's what keeps you balanced because they're checking you. It's just like any supervisor on the street with a young cop. They see that cop about to make a mistake, and they know they're going to make a mistake. As long as it's not illegal, it's not as long as it's not going to get somebody hurt. A good supervisor will let them go down that road and burn that ham, touch that stove, right? Because that's the only way you learn, not by
Yep.
people telling you. And I've had those people let me make those mistakes, and then they check me and they tell me, "Hey, you probably shouldn't have done this." And those people in my world that are outside of law enforcement, they're the best friends that I have, to keep me balanced. And to this day, I still have that long relationship with them. And you're right, you got to have that outside perspective.
Yeah. It's funny you bring up the suspicious minds thing. And there was one of our sergeants that retired a couple years ago, old salty sergeant. And I was talking to him not long after I retired. And he was telling me the transition going basically from the cop life into civilian life,
Yeah.
for lack of better terms, I guess. And he was telling me, the first year or so after he retired, he'd see somebody walking down the street and be like, what the hell's this guy up to? He
Yeah.
looks like a shitbag. He said about a year went by and he would see somebody walking down the street and he would think to himself, I wonder what happened to this person. Like, I wonder if they're having a bad day or, just his whole mentality switched. And that was just,
Yeah.
he said like a year after it. And he started looking at people differently. And, I'm obviously not to that point yet. I've only been retired for a few months, but I'm hoping to get to that point where I'm not just suspicious of everybody. But you still know in the back of your mind who you need to be looking out for and who you don't. But it was just it was an interesting story, the way he looks at people now compared to what he used to. And like I said, I'm hoping I get to there one day. I'm not. Are you there right now?
Because I'm still active. I mean, my role is different now as a public information officer. I'm not on the street, and I have a different role. I work directly for my boss, who's the CEO for the agency, but my mind is still there because I'm still tied to the agency. I hear everything that's going on. I put out everything that's going on. I think like a cop still, for sure. I still train. I do all the training. So my mind is set that way. And truly, I think people have to do that. When you're in this profession, you have to have that sixth sense to you. You have to develop that. And it's not something that's just you start day one and you have it. You develop that being around the calls, being around the other fellow officers. And it's really there to keep you alive and to keep you from somebody getting up and over on you. There's a lot of things that, I've read a lot of books and I've gone to a lot of training. Bad guys that are really, really bad guys out there, they look for signs to see where officers are vulnerable. As this officer, am I going to get over? Am I going to be able to fight this guy and beat him? They truly look at that. So if you're not sharp like they are mentally and be able to, push off some of that stuff, like, hey, come over here, or they can control you, you're not going to have a very successful career because you're going to end up getting hurt. But you're right. When you leave, I've got a lot of friends because I'm in that age bracket where a lot of the people that were my senior people have retired. I keep in contact with them. And it's amazing to just see them in person sometimes because they look better physically and healthy. Cops on average live 7 years less than the average person.
Mm-hmm.
And cops that die in the line of duty, it's 3 times more than that take their own lives every year. This job weighs on you. And there's a lot of things that people don't get the help. They don't take care of themselves. And I'm not saying I'm perfect. I've had one too many burritos in my life, but what I'm saying is that, you have that. And so when you retire, I think it takes a while to indoctrinate yourself. And I think that's why it's so important for me, I think that transition is going to be a little bit easier because I have stand-up comedy. Like that's the thing that people wonder, I think, when they retire, what am I going to do? Well, for me, I know what I'm going to do when I fully retire. I'm just going to do stand-up, and they got to have something to do. And I think a lot of retirees also, I don't know if you see this in your agency, but they retire, but then we see people come back and they're volunteers for the agency, or they come back and they work the photo radar thing, or they come back and they do something affiliated with law enforcement because they just can't break from it. And
Yeah.
so I think when I leave, my goal is when I break from here, I'll keep in contact with people, but I'm not coming back to do any of these other collateral jobs because I want to live outside that. I want to get back to the point where you said a good point, walking down the street and wondering, is this guy having a good day? Is he having a bad day? Not like, what's this guy up to? What's he doing? Where's
Right.
he headed? Where did he just come from? Right? Because that's the way we think.
Yeah. And like I say, you're still in it, so you still have to think that way 100%. And I'd be worried about you if you weren't thinking that way while you're still in the game. Yeah. I always compare it to, when they're retired now for about 3.5 months, but I almost compare it to like getting out of prison. You hear about people getting out of prison after a long time.
Yeah.
They have to kind of reintroduce themselves into society. That's kind of what I feel like. I feel like I have to reintroduce myself into normal society. And it's a weird feeling, man. It really is.
When you said that, you made me think of Shawshank Redemption, when that old guy gets out of the prison, and he's been institutionalized for the better part of his life, right? And so when he goes into the world outside has changed. And if there's anything that can be said about cops is we hate change and everything that stays the same, right?
Yep.
So going from an institutionalized setting out, you have lived your life, a certain way. You don't affiliate with people that you're not supposed to affiliate with. You don't go places where you shouldn't go because of what could potentially happen there. You spend your entire life not putting yourself in situations that normal people go do every day. And we don't, and so it's very tough. I think it is tough, and you lived a certain code, for lack of better words, and you have a certain ethos that you practice. And a lot of people don't have those things, don't face those things. A lot of people don't think twice. Well, if I get in a car and I get a DUI, if I get a DUI, that is not going to necessarily make my job go away, right? Because you're in the private sector. But as a cop, you're done. You get a DUI, anything, domestic violence. If you end up getting a domestic violence charge, for us in Colorado, you're done.
Yeah.
If you have
post something stupid on Facebook or on the internet, and you're done.
You're done. And it's everything because you're living up to not only your life and your responsibilities, but you're also representing the agency. And that is a very different thing because most of the time in the private sector today, like people are very used to, okay, I work from 10 a.m. or 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And when I'm done, I'm done. And in law enforcement, yeah, you may technically be done, but if we have an all hands on deck situation that arises, your ass can be drawn back in the next hour and you're going to be put on a shift and you're going to work whatever they tell you you're going to work because it's a disaster or an emergency or whatever it is, active shooter, whatever. I mean, it's just the way in the life we have. Plus, when you're done with your shift, of course, there's all the ancillary things that we have to do, right? You have court, which is always, in the middle of your time that you're supposed to be sleeping if you're on night shift. You got all those DUI hearings for the revocation of the license. You have training. So being a police officer is just not being the 9 to 5. It is shift work, and that, and it's a big responsibility to take on. So being more selfish about taking care of yourself early on in your career will only help you be able to transition better later by keeping those things outside of work that are actively in your life, friends outside of work who you are not cops friends with, and having those family members. And the other thing that I didn't touch on earlier is just being open and honest where you're at as a police officer and your mental health, talking with your significant other. I blocked out my significant others the whole time while I was struggling. I wasn't sharing all the things that I was experiencing and feeling. And I thought I was doing them a favor. And I lay everything out. I was engaged twice before I was with the woman that I'm with today, and we've been together for a long time now. But when I was in those struggle times, I was not telling them all the things I was thinking about and feeling, and I let them create their own narratives because I wasn't sharing about what's going on. And the thing I've learned is your family lives the failures, the successes, the tragedies. They live all that with you because you bring that home, and they end up seeing and experiencing everything you're going through. There's no hiding it. So you might as well just be open and honest about what's going on. I mean, not the details of the case where you get in trouble, but just, I saw some really tough stuff tonight. Somebody died, and I would never share that stuff. So it was like I was keeping them on their own island, and I lost both of those relationships, and I was the one responsible for that.
Yeah. And the whole, about you're never off duty, basically.
Yeah.
You don't realize how much that weighs on you too until after you retire. And one of the biggest things, or the best things, I guess, that I've noticed since I retired is I'm not attached to my phone anymore.
Yeah.
And, when I retired, I was the CID lieutenant.
You want mine, dude? I'll give you mine and the...
No, I'm good. Trust me. And just I don't even, I put my phone on silent at night. I don't have to worry about my phone ringing at 3 a.m. and, whatever happened. And, like I said, I was a CID lieutenant going in the middle of the night. I don't worry. That's a huge stress right there, just taking off of me where I don't have to worry about the chief calling me. I don't have to worry about shit. It's great. As long as I answer the phone, my wife calls or my kids call, that's all that matters to me.
You're right, because how many times have you, and these are the things, and I'm not trying to discourage people from becoming law enforcement.
It's hard to talk about anything without sounding discouraging. It really is,
It is, but you get used to, and this is the things that I never forget, missing birthday parties, getting called out. We had in 2020, December 2020, we had the Marshall Fire here in Colorado, and I was in Seattle on vacation. I flew back that day to take over operations for law enforcement for night shift. Nobody asked me to do it, but that's the kind of mentality as a commander at that level is required to do. They're not required, but that's the ethos, the expectation that you're going to shell out and help out your partners when you're in time of need. And I can't tell you how many times I've had to wake up in the middle of the night and tell my better half, "Hey, I got to go." It's disheartening because we had plans the next day, or "Hey, I'll go meet with you and the family here, and then I got to cancel." And boy, you go through a lot of that. So when I say your family lives it with you, that's what I'm talking about. Is all those things that you hope and plan to do. This job will impact that. And it's for a noble reason. It's for a good thing, but you have to really work hard to keep it up in other areas and make up for that because it really weighs hard on the family.
Yeah, it does. And, I've been married 27 years now, and it's hard for me to look back and think about the shit that I put my wife through, just because of a job.
Yeah.
And, obviously it was more than a job to me, but,
right.
But what she had to go through to deal with me dealing with the job, it's a weird paradigm, I guess, but, I'm thankful that, she's still here with me, and
that's
I'm hoping to have her on the show.
Yeah. Can you imagine a podcast of just, significant others talking about their experiences?
Yeah.
I couldn't even imagine what that would sound like because I'm sure there's things that Katrina has never told me that have annoyed her beyond belief.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm with the right woman because when I'm like, I got to go, there's not a whole lot of bantering or, she understands and she gives me that latitude. She loves me enough to give me that flexibility. But I tell her everything that I experience, everything that I see. And, I don't hold that back anymore where I used to do that. And I think she understands that honesty. She has her struggles too with her job and her things that go on. But really, not trying to hide that piece of it, because when you hide things, it makes things a lot tougher.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, thank God for our significant others because it would have been a whole different career for me if my wife wasn't there. I can promise you that.
Oh, for sure.
You got to have that rock there with you. And it doesn't even have to be your spouse. It could be, boyfriend, girlfriend. It could be aunt, uncle, doesn't matter who it is. You always need somebody that you can go to with things. And it's hard for especially young guys to figure that out, who they can actually trust and go to with those kind of things if they're not in a relationship or whatever it may be. But I think we've done a pretty poor job as, I was part of the administration. I think we've done a poor job of kind of developing those mentors for those younger guys. I speak for my experience. I don't know about your agency or anything else, but I think we did kind of a shitty job in developing mentors for the younger guys. I mean, obviously we had FTOs and everything else, but hell, at one point the FTOs were the freaking same age as the new recruits, because we were down so many people. And then, again, going back to if you have a pulse, hey, we're going to make that guy an FTO, you know what I mean? Kind of thing. But
yeah, babies training babies.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
And I think that's the way it is around the country a lot right now today, because so many of the people in the agencies are very young. That old generation, my generation, your generation, we're at the end of our careers, and you have the young ones teaching. And just because you made me think of it, COVID cops. I don't know if you've ever heard that term, but we were telling our people not to make contacts unless they absolutely had to, because we were trying to protect them from getting sick and all that stuff. And that whole time people were going to the academy virtually, which I don't know how you go to academy virtually, and they come out. I do think, though, on a positive note, we do have a better job of acknowledging the trauma and the things that can impact cops today in 2025. We've really worked over that we have peer support teams. This last year, I think it was in 2024, we had a guy or gal take their life on scene with a bunch of our cops, and it was a pretty traumatic scene. The division chief came out there and he ended up letting them, if you want to take burn time and go home and kind of regroup with your family, we'll backfill you for the day and get more people to come in. I thought that was amazing because I've never really seen that done before. So that's a new acknowledgement. And just, taking care of your people and saying, like, having mental health available for them for no cost. We do that even for their first degree family members. So that's a whole new ball game changer because, like I said, it's not you just going through it. Cops' kids are notoriously known to be problematic sometimes, and getting that help that they need it's a game changer. And you don't know what you don't know until you experience it. So, don't be so hard on yourself, because I was part of that old school, this is the way we've always done it, God damn it. We're going to continue to do it that way, right? But you can't, things change, life changes, and you have to be willing to be flexible and change with it. And I think we're doing a better job. And I'm sure even your agency is doing a much better job today, because, you're talking about, some things that are revolutionary, right? Because back in the day, it was, all about seniority and God damn it, you better be here on time. And if you're not, it's your ass and getting yelled at. I'm sure you can relate to this, Chubbs. How many times did you have a sergeant call you in the office and be like, did you do that? Don't do that shit again. All right, get out of here. And that was the interaction, right?
Right.
If we talk to our troops that way today, like we would
Shit.
have resignations by the handful, right? So things do change, things have to change. And I think we're better for it, honestly. There's some old school things I think that would still be kind of cool nostalgically and things like that. But life is an evolution of change, man.
Yeah. And well, I think we've come a long way. I agree with that as far as the mental health thing. And I think there's a lot of agencies that have good intentions, but I'll speak for an incident I was involved in where we had an officer involved shooting. I was a supervisor on scene when it happened. I was there for the shooting. I wasn't the shooter, but after that incident, the good intentions were there. They sent everybody that was involved in that incident to speak to somebody about it. But the part where that failed was they had us all go in a room with the psychologist or whatever it was at the same time and sit in a circle and try to talk to the psychologist. And, I was the lieutenant there with my entire shift, basically sitting there with a psychologist. And she's like, well, what do you want to talk about? Well, nobody's going to say shit.
Right.
You know what I mean? In front of each other. So the intentions were good.
Right.
But I think it needs
And
to be looked
especially in
at.
front of the lieutenant,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because they're not going to say anything in front of me, but the intentions were good. I think we're moving in the right direction, but there's still some flaws in the system and everything else. But I have to ask you about one of the parts
Whatever
on your
you
show.
want. Sure.
The 420 event.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that a
Go
true
for it.
story?
Yeah, that's a true story.
That shit is funny as hell.
I mean, I turned it into a funny bit, but the story, the premise behind it is absolutely true. They had a University of Colorado. They didn't host it, but just literally 10,000 people descended on the University of Colorado Boulder, and they put fish manure on the grass, like to try to deter people, but that didn't do anything.
Seriously?
Yeah, they did. I mean, it was just a whole day, and I was working off duty for it, full capacity where I work, but we probably had, 60, 70 cops up there, and it's just literally a cloud of smoke. We were walking through this, and the only thing that went through my mind that whole day is like, how am I not breathing this in? And I remember having thoughts like, for God's sake, don't let me get an OIS after this call, because
my God.
they draw your blood, and you're like,
oh yeah,
well, you have cannabis in your blood, and it's like, so I was like, how do I take that experience and make it funny? And it took a long time. It took me almost, I would say, 4 years to finally find the right way to tell that joke.
Yeah.
And I don't know why Tickle Me Elmo inspired me as a reason to bring it in there, but just taking that, and it's still one of these days when I do that, tell that story, people just love it, because they're like, wow, here's this cop in this situation where he's supposed to be completely in control and he's having these thoughts. But again, that makes me relatable to people, because cops are just like everybody else. It doesn't mean we don't think like everybody else, that we don't wonder the same things, right? We just have to, we're not allowed to give our opinions. We have to stay apolitical when we're working. We have to be indifferent at times. We have to be without opinion and just do what's in front of us and be professional. But it doesn't mean we don't think that. So I think that's the thing that people come away with when they see me perform, is like, oh my gosh, this guy just totally rocked my world, because he took something that I thought would just be like mundane as a cop, and he turned it into something that I can relate to. So yeah, I would say 95% of the stuff that I talk about, the backstory is for sure true. I've experienced it in some way, shape, or form.
They reminded me of, this part's not funny, but we had a double homicide where we had two bodies that were in a truck, and the truck had burned up and everything. That part's not funny. That's the important part. But
right.
In the bed of the truck, there was a bale. It was probably a 5-pound bale of marijuana in the bed of this truck that was on fire.
Yeah.
And basically what it was, these guys had snitched him out, and long story, but so they left a bale of dope in the truck, I guess, to send a message. So I'm there next to the truck the entire time while this, 5-pound brick of marijuana is burning in the bed of the truck. And I'll never forget, our commander shows up out there, and by then the fire's put out. I'm kind of leaning on the bed of the truck, and things are smoldering still. The first thing I said to him, he could smell it obviously when he walked up, but first thing I said to him is, hey man, you got any Doritos? And he looked at me like, you've got to be kidding me. And I'm like, I've been standing here for like 30 minutes, man. I don't know what you want me to do. Like,
Yeah,
But
there's no way you weren't impacted by it. It reminds me of that lady, that reporter. I don't know if you ever saw that video. It's an old video. She's standing in the middle of a marijuana field while they're burning it,
oh my
and
God.
the wind shifts and it's like hitting her, and like you could literally see her starting to like sway back and forth. And I'm like,
Her eyes
Jesus.
glassing over and everything. And yeah,
Oh my God. I mean,
that's
we would
awesome.
go into it's so crazy with the experiences, right? Like when I was in narcotics, we'd kick doors in, do search warrants, and we would be in there without like Tyvek suits, ripping out
Right.
marijuana grows, and you have all this, shake and everything rubbing up against your arms and stuff. There's no way in hell that you can tell me that, we weren't impacted in some way, shape, or form. So
Yeah.
yeah, but again, you don't know what you don't know. Like, look at all those guys in Utah. I just remember this when I was on the MLRT team, the meth lab response team at one point.
Hmm.
And these old investigators were going into these houses when meth labs first started coming out, and they're like walking up to the chemicals that are still brewing, and they're like wafting it to see what it is. If you were to take a crew out to do that today, I mean, they're in full Tyvek suits with
Oh yeah.
SCBAs, and those guys all start having health effects and dying. And again, law enforcement has gone through an evolution of, people were very, oh, I don't want a body camera. Now our guys won't go anywhere without a body
Oh
camera
yeah.
because it's their
Yeah.
proof of what went down.
But that's like an episode of Chips though, like back in the day where they take their pinky and get the cocaine and lick it, you know.
Yeah.
Never did that,
Yeah.
but crossed my mind a couple times, but I never did it.
Well, I'll tell you this though, and as a former lieutenant, you understand this. In the old movies, you'd see the lieutenant or the captain had a bottle of scotch or something in the
Oh
drawer at the
yeah,
office,
man.
right? And
Yeah.
I was like, why would the cop have alcohol? But really, it really was symbolic of being in that role at that
Yeah.
higher level. Because how many times have you had people walk in, close the door, because a commander is equivalent to a lieutenant for us. How
Yeah.
many times you had somebody walk in your office, they close the door and they tell you something, you're like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And you're like, you just want to
Yeah.
take a bottle out and be like,
And I'm sure
take
there
a
were some
shot.
times where people thought I had a bottle on my desk after talking to me, but I never did. I'm just saying I could see people thinking I had a bottle on my desk.
People, they run, and they come in, they tell you the stuff. And of course, personnel issues are the worst. I don't know if you felt that way.
Yeah.
I would deal with an incident, a huge incident. I don't care what it was, it didn't matter. But personnel issues always brought me down personally more than anything else. It just, it's unending sometimes. And then, of course, people as being in the command role, they walk in and they're like, hey, I just want to let you know I did this. And of course, what that means translates to, hey, I already did this. And
Yeah,
I'm
you're
just
about to get a
letting you
phone
know,
call.
so that way I can put that in my report that I told you and you were aware. And
Yep.
now you're like, wow, geez, can you
Yep.
come in here with some good news? It's not always bad, but a command role, when you're talking about tasting the Coke and stuff, I always wondered why they had that bottle of scotch in the drawer, and for sure that I have learned that reason.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. I thought we were supposed to have that in our drawer, but that's what TV told me to do. That's what I was doing. Well, what other social media are you on? How do people find you?
I'm on everything. If people want to find me, the easiest way to do it is go to VinnieMontez.com. That's my website. You can see my tour schedule, all my links to Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Snap, Toolgram. Everything's on there. TikTok. I'm on all the social media platforms. I post all kinds of different stuff. And I'd love to see you come out to a show. I'd love to see you, Chubbs, at a show if we come to Fort Worth. I'd love to have you there. Heroes Off Duty is going to be a tour that I'm really looking forward to. Last year, I had the ability to tour with the Gary Sinise Foundation in Poland last year. And we went to 4 different military bases to perform for the troops. So that was a dream come true for me. I perform all over the country in the United States. I've been in Kansas and in Arizona this last week and a half. And I'm in Columbus this coming weekend doing a show for the Bridge. So, if you want to have me come out, I'm happy to do it. I perform for all kinds of groups. It doesn't have to be law enforcement too. I perform for everybody, a corporate, whatever it is. And I just enjoy it. And I'd love to meet you, not only you, Chubbs, in person, but just anybody who wants to stop by and talk. I always meet and greet after every single show. I don't care how long it takes. I'm only able to do what I'm able to do is because people love my message and it resonates with them in some way, shape, or form. Probably the best compliment I've ever had is, hey, I've had a really tough week at work, and I go onto YouTube or I go onto one of your platforms and I pull up one of your videos and I watch it and it makes me feel good. And I'm so grateful for that because we didn't get to where we got to in our careers, Chubbs, without people helping us out. And I am truly grateful for my fans and the people that follow me because I am just blessed and I am so appreciative of it.
Well, will you do me a favor and tell Officer Daniels and Trailer Trash Tammys, will you tell them Chubb says hello?
I will. I'll do that.
Yeah.
They're good people, man.
Yeah, they're both funny as hell.
Yeah, that show, we did that show. Her and I did a show. Officer Daniels, myself, Trailer Trash Tammy, Libby Higgins, and one other comedian. We were at the Texas Motor Speedway. This had to be 2018, and we did a show for a little girl named Hallie, and she has an organization called Hallie's Heroes, and we raised like I would say 20 or 30 grand for her during that show, and that was really something that taught me a lot. And being with those people, it's about who you surround yourself with, right? So in law enforcement, you surround yourself with good people so you don't get in trouble. And in comedy, I've surrounded myself with some really good people that I've been fortunate to come across. And those two people that you mentioned, Officer Daniels and Trailer Trash Tammy, Chelsea Lynn, they're good people, man, and they're doing good things out there. And I will make sure to say what's up from Chubbs and tell them you said hello.
I appreciate that, man. All right. Well, hey, I appreciate you taking your time and hanging out with us tonight. And it's been fun. Everybody make sure you go watch the Prime. I would recommend starting off with the Prime Video, the Vinnie-isms on Prime, on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, Vinnie-isms, the story of the cop comedian.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's really funny. And obviously, you know, you're, like you said, you're everywhere. You're on YouTube, Instagram. I mean, you name it. You're all over the place. So I know you're a busy guy, and I appreciate you taking your time out and hanging out with me tonight. And we will, we'll be in touch, man. Hopefully I get to see you again. Hopefully you come to Dallas-Fort Worth area and we can hang out.
Yeah, man, you got to take me a good spot to eat. Let's get.
Yeah, I could definitely do that. I could definitely. My name's not Chubbs for no reason, so that's for sure. But
hey, Chubbs, I just want to say, man, I really appreciate the real talk that we had there. I know, you know, people always expect me to be funny, but we were talking about some serious stuff there for a minute, and it felt good to be able to talk to you about that because it's important. People who are coming into this field, you know, we've got lots of years of experience and wisdom. If we give anybody a little flake of gold, we don't want to discourage anybody from coming to serve in law enforcement because it is an honorable profession and we need people left and right. But damn it, you know, I want to just be honest about what my experience was, and I appreciate you sharing, you know, some of your background and all that stuff that with me and taking the time. And I look forward to building a relationship with you, Chubbs, and I'm gonna look you up when I come to Fort Worth, man.
Hell yeah. Make sure you do, man. You got my number.
I got your cell phone number now, man. Yeah, I got your cell phone number.
Oh, God. You're going to be sending me memes and shit all the time and all that. And
I'm not a mean guy, you know, but we'll see. We'll see.
I make some good AI videos. I'm going to have to share some of those with you, but
yeah,
that's just fun. But all right, buddy. Well, I appreciate you, man. And you have a good night. All right, man.
All right. Thank you very much. God bless.
All right. You too.